Joining us from White House Middle East advisor and former U.S. ambassador to Morocco, Mark Ginsburg. Ambassador, thank you for joining us.
Really, Katie.
We don't know what the actual death toll is. We have a verified 500 number, but it could be much higher. The protests look violent. They look destructive. How close is, or how at risk is the regime today?
There's no doubt, Katie, that this is probably the most widespread protests that have been seen in Iran since 2009. Just the fact that the protests are organic, that are just not political in nature, but started because of economic conditions and have spread so widely. And frankly, based on the reports that I have seen from the leading opposition group to Iran that's providing support to the Iranian opposition, led by Maryam Rajavi and the National Council of Resistance of Iran, that number is far higher. The key here is whether or not, in the end, the opposition can coalesce around some leadership, both internally and externally. And secondly, whether the President of the United States and the United States can provide the technical and cyber support the opposition needs in order to unite.
What is the opposition, though? Is there a unifying leader for the opposition? I know there's some people that are talking about the former Shah's son who's been living in exile. But is he popular enough to lead Iran?
No, this is a self-created delusion by people around the pretender to the throne. There is hardly any support within Iran for a restoration of the monarchy, particularly under Pahlavi, who is more or less lounged in California and is trying to latch on to these protests. The major opposition leader globally is Maryam Rajavi, who leads the NCRI, or the what is known as the MEK. And that organization has actually boots on the ground providing support to the opposition leadership in many of these cities. But indeed, the internal opposition structure of Iran has been decimated by this regime.
If the president of the United States gets involved, what are the risks? There has been some talk that the regime might welcome it and use it then, any sort of involvement by the U.S., as a reason for folks to rally around the flag. There's a difference between Iranian people trying to overthrow their government and, the United States or another foreign superpower getting involved and doing it for them.
Katie, I agree with you. I'm of the view that if the United States does attack Iran, if it's going to attack, it's best to attack its oil installations, which are not directly involved in this uprising, and that most of that oil revenue is what underpins this regime, largely goes to China. I strongly believe that the best thing the United States can do is to provide the technical satellite communications and other communications means that the Iranian opposition leads. If this is going to succeed, Katie, it's because the people were willing to risk their lives against the internal Gestapo police of the regime and, in effect, force the regime to capitulate.
Have you seen a moment as fraught as this for this regime?
Katie, I've been involved in Iran since I served in the Carter administration and watched our policy unravel then. The most important thing here is the fact that this protest movement is so widespread, involves the economic foundations of the country. But the key here, Katie, is going to be, what do the police forces do? Will they break? Will they stop firing on the protesters? Or will the protesters be forced to retreat? The key here is the Basij, the internal Gestapo. If the administration is going to do anything militarily, it would be best to take out those command and control centers of the Basij.
All right, Ambassador Ginsburg, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Katie.